Hello, in this video I want to show you some very useful commands when you're drawing with P5.js and the JavaScript language. So the code that I'm looking at here just has a command to draw a circle, so we can see what some other commands would be. And one place to find this is if you go to the help at the top here, and then you can open up the reference page. That will have a list of different commands that you can use. Alright, so if you look through there, then you might see that in addition to circle, there's also another command called rect, meaning for rectangle. So we're calling that function. So anytime you call a function, then you use these parentheses, open and close the parentheses. Now, sometimes these are left empty, but because we are defining a specific kind of a rectangle that we want to be drawn, where exactly do we want it to be, what's its width and height, that we do need to put some numbers in here. And that reference page would explain all of the different pieces that need to be there. How do you know what to put in here? The documentation and the reference tell you. But we'll look at an example right here. Right, but the things that we put inside these parentheses are those details of how do I want to draw this rectangle? Where do I want to draw it? Right, so it just turns out that there are pretty much 4 numbers that we want to put in here. There are some extra options, but we'll stick with the basics. So those would be the X position, the Y position, the width, and then the height. So if I start with just going 50, 50, 50, and 100, I want to have the width and the height be different. Right, to kind of see what that looks like. So the X and the Y refer to the top left corner of the rectangle. So that's where this point is going to start. And then the width says what the width of that rectangle will be. And then the height will say how far down this rectangle is going to extend. Right, so rect is a good function for drawing. Right, similar to circle, there's also a function called ellipse. We're going to call that function, so we have parentheses here. And there's lots of different ellipses we could draw, different sizes, different locations, so we do have to put parameters inside of these parentheses here. All right, an ellipse actually is kind of similar to a rectangle, so we have an X and a Y and a width and a height, but it'll give it a rounded edge, so instead of it being a rectangle shape, it's more like a circle shape. It's an ellipse. And so if we did same width and height and X and Y, that's a rectangle, we can looks like. So the big difference with ellipse is that that X and Y position isn't the top left corner anymore. It's the center of it, so you can almost tell that the center of this ellipse is where the top left corner of that rectangle would fall. And if I change the numbers around here, if I made the X be a little bit larger, then that would move it farther over to the right. If I change the height of it to be larger, that would make it longer. Since it's center-based, then it forced it to go off the page there. Now, the order that these things go in is important. All right, so you could tell before, when I had those shapes overlapping, that the ellipse was drawn on top of the rectangle. And that's because I called the ellipse function after I called the rectangle function. If I took this, did a control X, and a control V to move it up here, and then ran it again, I can see how now the rectangle is on top of the ellipse. So the order that these are in the code does affect the way that it looks over here. Things that I do earlier on in the code are going to kind of be drawn on the bottom, and then things that are done later on in the code are going to be drawn on top of it. So that's why that rectangle showed up on top of the ellipse. And another function you can draw with is the line function. And so when I call it, I use the parentheses there. There are many different kinds of lines I can draw, so I definitely need to put some parameters in here. And the parameters are the two different points that get connected. So I'm first going to give the x and the y position of where the line is starting. These don't have to be the same number. And then the next two numbers are going to be the x and the y position of where the line ends. All right, so you can see that it drew those 2 points together, but a line in between them. All right, so that's it for the shapes, and then we can also see in another video how to do colors.